Hi everyone, I'm Shanti back with another episode of Shanti Finance. Since November, I'm working on a series of paintings where I am reimagining Disney characters as real people. I did Pocahontas, I did Elsa, and last month I did Merida. So this month again, I was thinking, what should I paint for February? And then some online social media platform, I saw that February is actually a month to paint fairies, like fairyfeb or februfairy, something like that. And that clicked an idea. Let's paint Tinkerbell. So here I present Tinkerbell, and I'm working on watercolors today. Let's go through the painting process.
After doing my initial drawing on Strathmore cold press watercolor paper, I started by wetting the entire background behind the face and the body with a lot of water. I don't want pools of water, but I wanted the paper to be soaked so that when I start applying color, the color automatically blooms and spreads across the entire wet surface, and that helps me get a very nice smooth blend when I start applying colors. So you see that I started with a very pale yellow color around the face and the head, and then on the borders I am started with a kind of bluish gray, a cooler gray tone, and somehow I want both of the colors to mix and make a nice smooth transition. I want the gray to be very dark but the yellow to be very light, so kind of giving it a look of a halo, you can say, for lack of a better word. What it does is kind of like gives you a feeling that of a little bit of light behind the head. So that's what the look I'm going for. You can see that I'm using multiple brush strokes in different sides, but every time I'm applying a layer, I'm trying to keep the brush strokes consistent in one direction, and so that you have a multiple blend of brush strokes, and eventually it is a nice smooth blend. Now since I'm working wet on wet at this point, you will see that at times I am lifting up some color of the from the background instead of putting in more colors as I'm applying layers. This is a problem that happens with watercolor, so you need to be a little more careful that you don't push the color too hard on the surface, otherwise it will lift off the older layers that you've already put. Now onto the face. I started with a light flesh tint, and for flesh tint I always mix some kind of a red, white, yellow, and a little bit of purple or blue for the cooler shadow areas. And I'm just spreading out a very loose light layer, and then while the surface is still wet, I'm adding a lot of red around the cheeks and the eyes, the areas of the face which are very rich in capillaries and thus are redder than the rest of the areas, which is the cheeks, the nose, the forehead a little bit, and then I'm applying lots of browns and purples to the shadow areas. I'm loosely going off a reference photo that came from the picture of an Indian actress, Priyanka Chopra, but I'm not trying to get a similar like a likeness of her face, just looking at the shadows. So if you're trying to paint a realistic face, it's always advisable to have a reference photo. That would give you a very nice hint of where to go, which direction to go and which direction not to go with the shadows. That's one of the things that it's absolutely necessary if you're trying to learn to paint realistically, especially in case of portraits. You don't need to focus a lot on the likeness of the face, but you will get a very good understanding of the shadow areas, lights and darks, and the face structure only by looking at a real face or a face in a photograph. So reference photo, once again, is crucial in my opinion to learn to paint portraits realistically. So you can see that I am just keeping on adding layers one after the other, and my goal here is to create a very smooth blend So each time I'm applying kind of a darker layer, I am smoothing the edges out using a lot of water, apart from a few areas like under the nose, in the nostrils, and the parting of the lips. Those are the areas I want lines. Otherwise, I do not want any harsh lines. You'll see that at this point probably I'm creating a lot of harsh lines, but since watercolor can always be reactivated by using more water, I will eventually get rid of most of the harsh lines by blending it all off. If I were a supremely good watercolor artist, which I'm not, I think my watercolor skills are kind of like an intermediate compared to the use of other mediums that I use, and probably it would. So if I were even more an expert in watercolors, even the little bit of blotchy look that you see here wouldn't have occurred. But it's a part of the learning curve. So you slowly learn to get it blended as smooth as you want to. Now onto the eyes. I think a good thing, important thing about Tinkerbell's eyes that it was very vividly blue, and thankfully I had just the right color and my Holbein set of colors to get the right blue. So you can see that I applied a layer of cerulean blue base layer first and let a little bit of area for the highlights be the white. In case of watercolor, you can go much darker easily, but going light is much harder. So if you want some area to be white, like in the highlights for the eyes and eyelid, then it's better to leave those areas white. You can also use some masking fluid to keep these areas white till the very end if you're very new to watercolors and you're not sure if you can keep the whites white. But this was a very small area and I did not think it necessary, and it worked out in this case. So you see that right now I'm working on the eyes, and I added a lot of color to the inner white eye part of the eye, because white of the eyes is never white. There is a lot of color there, and there is a lot of shadows because of the eyelid on the top part, and you need to take care of all those elements one by one. Now onto the eyebrows, and I'm slowly adding different shades of purple, brown, and mixed with a little bit of black, of course, in the eyebrows to get slowly to the level of color that I want to. Next, I'll be working on the lips. First, I created a very dark line at the parting of the lip, and then I'm slowly creating some marks that will denote the shape of the lip and the curves. And then I'm blending some of the marks that I've already created to give a more rounded three-dimensional look to the lip. And I'll keep working on the same slowly. For getting some of the areas lighter on the lip, I added a little bit of white gouache. Some people like to use acrylics in this case, but when I'm using watercolors, I like to keep stay as close to watercolors as possible, so I use gouache instead of acrylics. So onto the body, or the neck and shoulder area, I first use the same base layer color of the flesh, and then I'm slowly going to add a lot of shadows. I'm not going to pay a lot of attention to this body part because I want the focus to be the face. So I am going to create some shadows, and obviously going to portray the lights and darks and shadows and lines of the shoulder and the neckline and the collarbone and all that thing that is present in the body. But I'm not going to go into great ordeal to paint every fine detail there should be. Obviously, if you are wanting to paint realistically, and the more work you do in each area, the better your results would be. So it's kind of a personal choice how much detail in each area you want to go into. And in this case, I chose to be moderate in details, in at least in the shoulder, neck, and body region. And my main focus was a face. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. So adding a lot of shadows with blues and purples here just staying with the same color frame as I used in the face, but I'm going for a little bit darker in the body because generally face is a lot lighter than the rest of the body as far as skin tone is concerned. I'm putting a lime green color outfit, which is very, very Tinkerbell-y, if I may. So I added a lot of yellow to my sap green and then created a base layer, and then added a lot more of viridian and sap greens in the sides to create some shadows. And this, I think, is very important when you are trying to paint Tinkerbell, because this lime green is very indicative of the character. This is something I think you will be able to identify with as a part of Tinkerbell. And adding some more shadows in the body area. Like I earlier said in the introduction, that this particular character I chose this month because February is supposed to be the month when you paint fairies, something like februfairy or fairyfeb. So I chose Tinkerbell to be my Disney character of the month. On to the hair. Now, Tinkerbell's hair in the anime character is very, very yellow. In my real life, I've never seen anybody, even like colored hair, unnaturally colored hair, to be that bright and yellow. So that was a little bit of a trick for me to paint. I did not know exactly what colors to go for and what would be the shadows when I trying to replicate the same realistically. So what I did is I kind of went into looking into different shades of blonde hair and kind of an orange blonde hair and very white blonde hair, and tried to mix all of those references to create what I thought would be the hair look like if I tried to paint yellow hair. Now, how much I actually was able to replicate the yellow hair, I'll let you viewers decide. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the yellow of her hair. Is that indicative of how yellow Tinkerbell's hair is or not? And like the rest of the painting, I worked in the hair area also in layers. I started with a very light base layer of yellow, and then slowly build up layers with orange, brown, and darker yellows. And for shadows, I've used a little bit of blues as well, and purples too, just to stay in tune with the rest of the face. Finally, I'm adding a lot more brighter yellows to make it really look like Tinkerbell. That's what I'm trying here to the best of my abilities. Let me know what you think about the yellow hair. I'm really curious how much it worked and that not. And viewers are always the best judge in my opinion, because sometimes I get biased. And continuing on to build more and more layers. All my previous characters of Disney that I have already reimagined as real people, they're linked in the video description below if you haven't checked them already. I have either done in oils or I have done in acrylics. This is the first time I did character in watercolor, and I think it worked really well. I'd like to know your thoughts too, whether I should stick to oils and acrylics for these character paintings, or I should use watercolors and other mediums that I generally paint with. I'd like to know your thoughts as well. So in my opinion, this was a very good experience. I painted a watercolor portrait after quite a bit, and I enjoyed the difference, because watercolor is much more challenging, as it is not a very forgiving medium. To make changes once you have painted is a little bit difficult than other mediums that I work with. So onto the bun of Tinkerbell, the same yellow and brown colors I've used in the bun as well. And Tinkerbell's bun is adorned by a green band that I've also put in, trying to keep as close to the character as possible, because that's what my aim here is with this entire series, to reimagine how Tinkerbell would look like if it were a real person, or a real fairy for that matter. So you can see I'm adding a little bit of hint of green in the face too, because I thought if there is so much of yellow in the face, the yellow and purple would probably give us a greenish look too. So that's pretty much it about the head and face, although I'm working on a surface that is far away from the face. And there the band is done as well. And then next I'll move on to the fairy fin, or what do you call it, wings. Oh yeah, not fin, wings. So when I worked on the wings, although right now I'm working on the neck area and enhancing the shadow as well, but I'd like to talk about the wings. It was a tiny bit difficult, because if I were working in acrylics or oils, it would have been very easy to make a very dark gray background and paint the decorations on the fin or the lines on the wing with a lighter gray and white combination. But in this case I'm working with watercolors, so that really does not work out. So what I did is I drew out the designs or the markings on the fin with white gouache first on the surface. Then I went back to the background and added gray in between those lines to bring out the white. So just did an alternate approach of making the darker areas darker to show the lighter areas in contrast. And I personally think that the wings and the background could have been a little bit more dark after I finished the painting, but I already thought that I'm done, so I did not go back to the painting, although I can always go back and revisit and finish off and make it a bit darker anytime I want to. But at this point I just want to call it done, and I thought it did not look too bad. But once again, I'll let you decide what you think. Should I have gone and made it darker, added some layers? I was just worried that if I added even darker layers, it probably would look blotchy at this point, because I'm kind of working wet on dry, and that sometimes leaves kind of scratchy, not blended look, and I was kind of worried. I did not want that look, so kept it a little bit light than I would like it to be eventually. Let me know what you think about that. But I think this is a technique that works when you want things want the lighter areas to pop out, and you have already gotten into a little bit of dark. One more technique that you can try in your paintings. And that's all about these tutorials is. As I learn new things, as I try new things, I want to tell you about those things so that you can try them too and see what works for you and what does not. And together we can learn many new techniques and improve our art. That's like sharing my process with yours, learning from you guys. That's the best way to get either of us benefit from this video tutorial relationship. As you can see, I'm still darkening some of the areas, and that pretty much brings us to the end of this painting and the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, do not forget to give me a like. If you want to share it with your friends, feel free, because sharing is caring. And of course, if you are not already subscribed, consider subscribing, because I am posting new video tutorials every week, in fact twice a week. So I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.